Hi folks, Steve here with a new video, and today we're going to be painting a shield. So let's crack on. So this is it's a plastic Empire Militia shield with this nice little skull and crown detail on it, but this can be used for painting any kind of shield really. So let's get this primed and we can start. What I'm going to do first is just give it a all over dark brown coat. For this I'm using German Camo black brown, I think, from Vallejo model colour, just a dark brown, nice and thin as well, just to give us an even coverage on there. And then once that's done we can move on to start painting the design on the shield. And so for this I'm going to go for a quartered pattern, so that means we've got the shield split into four with two squares of each colour, and so it's going to be red and white. So I'm starting laying on the base colours. And first colour for the red is Vallejo model colour red leather. Really any kind of reddish brown will do for this. We just want something that's going to give us a nice solid base for the red to get built up on. And I'm using thin down paint. This is probably about 50-50 paint to water on my wet palette. Maybe not quite that much actually, but not far off. And we want to have it quite thin because we're building up this blotchy textured look that's going to help it look like a rough and weathered battered shield. So that's exactly what we want. We don't want the paint going on too thick, we don't want blobs of paint causing texture on it. If anything, we'll paint our own texture if we want it. And so I'm first going to mark out where I want the two red squares, as it were. I'm imagining them in my head as complete squares, and then filling in these areas on the shield that they cover. Once that's done, we'll move on to doing the white side, and for the base coat on this I'm using Vallejo game colour leather brown, this is, which is very similar to Citadel's snakebite leather. It's that kind of colour. It's a really good base for doing a kind of dirty white colour. So going through the same process as before, nice thin down paint, blocking out the areas, and you'll notice that I'm leaving a bit of a gap, so the red and the leather brown, they're not quite touching each other. There's some of that dark brown that's left in between there to create a bit of a border and add contrast. And once I've got the initial layer on, I'm just going to go over again exactly the same as before, same paint, same dilution, just to boost that up. And then once we've got that done, that's the base colours done for the quarters on the shield. And so now we're going to start building up those colours, starting with the red first. And so I've gone up to a colour called Pure Red by Army Painter, which is just a nice strong red colour. And same as before, we're using quite a heavy dilution of it, nearly 50-50. I'm concentrating on making small little dipples, essentially stippling the paint, and not going quite all the way to cover all the areas that we did with the original colour underneath. And same again for the whites, and this time I'm using another Army Painter colour. This one is called Mummy Robes. So it's pretty much white, it's just it's a little off white, it's a little dirty, it's not like a pure white colour. So I don't want to go too bright at this stage. And same again, you can see there, just doing little dots with my brush, with the tip of my brush there to get this colour on. And it is very thin, so we're still going to see some of the colour underneath, and again that's exactly what we want. We want this kind of dappled look to it that's not too bright and clear. And so you can see I've built it up gradually, brought it closer to the edges where the white and red meet, and it's just a case of going over and around. Done a couple of layers to really build that up. And now I'm just adding a little bit of the off-white colour into my red, not enough to turn it pink, but just to bring that vibrancy up a bit. And again, still using nice and thin paint and small little stabbing, little stippling motions. We're going to continue to build up that variance in colour and texture, just moving around and adding these little dots here and there, and just creating that effect. So now we're going to move on to the skull emblem on the shield. So I'm going to start by taking some of the leather brown that I used previously and adding just a touch of the off-white into it, so we get a slightly lighter colour, getting more towards like what I consider to be like a bone colour. And for this I'm going to start blacking in the areas that I don't want to be the darkest shadows, so all the sort of the raised surfaces, the the brow, the eye sockets, the nose, teeth, things like that. I'm going to leave the darkest recesses the original brown colour that we did, but I'm looking to get pretty much everything else covered in this colour. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to return to this off-white mix that we had from before, and then I'm going to start picking out the highlights on the skull. So pretty much the same areas that I've already covered in that mid-tone, but a much smaller, much tighter concentration, focusing really on the higher points. And I'm just doing this bit by bit, but I will go around multiple times and allow this to build up, so the more focused highlights will be brighter and clearer, but sticking with the same colour. So I don't want to take this all the way up to pure white. I still want to keep it on this kind of dirty bone kind of look to it. And in order to further boost the contrast and to differentiate between the white of the skull and the white of the background of the shield, I'm going to take a little bit of pure white. This is Army Painter white, I think, which is like a matte white colour, and just thin that down a little bit, and just using the same stippling technique that we were using earlier on the shield, just to add a few little bits around there as well, just to boost that, and so to make it clear that this part of the shield is like a white fabric compared to the highlight of the bone that we have on the device in the middle of the shield. Now we're going to move on to painting the crown, and we're going to go for pretty much a non-metallic metal look for this. And so I'm starting with another Vallejo model colour. This is gold brown, and it's very similar to the leather brown actually that we've already used, but this has sort of got more yellow in it, I would say, compared to the leather brown. So I chose to go with this for gold, but you could use exactly the same brown as before, and it shouldn't really make a difference. What I'm doing here is just taking the gold brown, and it's a little bit thinned down, not too much, and I'm just kind of hitting what I would consider to be the kind of bits where light is going to hit. So this is a very sort of scrappy kind of cheats way of doing non-metallic metal. It's a sort of quick and dirty way, and so what I'm doing is we're going to rely on using the dark brown base that we already have to give us our shadows, and here as I said, just sort of cutting in areas that I want to end up being the sort of the lighter reflections. So I'll put them in first with this brown, and then we'll move up to a couple of higher colours to really make these points shine, and that should give us the illusion of being non-metallic metal. And now I'm going to take a step up in colour by adding a mix of a paint called Crusader sand, which is a lighter yellow colour, into this gold brown. And we're going to go over much of the same areas again as we did with the original gold brown, but slightly tighter, slightly smaller area, similar to what we did with the skull when we moved up colours when we were highlighting there. So I'm going to hit the edges and the tip of the crown, and all the little bits where the light are going to catch. And then we're going to move on to the final highlights for the crown, and so I've gone up to the pure white that I was using earlier, and this I'm just going to use to highlight the most extreme points where we want the highest level of reflection to be. Just very carefully cutting these in, just to get those edges, and then once we've done that, that's our crown complete. At this point you can see that I decided I was going to boost the highlights on the skull as well, so I did incorporate a bit of the pure white into that, just touching some of the edges of the extreme highlights. And it's never too late to decide that you want to make a few changes to boost highlights and things like that, so it's always more of a process. You can go back to any area that you feel like you might have previously finished and just give it that little bit of extra pop. Never hurts to do that. And so now we're going to get to adding a little bit more damage and weathering to the shield just to finish it off. And so I've taken the original dark brown that we had as the base colour for the entire shield. So this is the German Camo black brown, if I remember the name correctly. And so I'm taking the tip of my brush and I'm making lots of little scratches and little indentations just on the edge of the shield. So this will be cutting into the white or the red of the squares of the quarters of the shield. So we're just going to go around and do that, and that'll give the impression of it being quite a battered shield with some damage on the edges. And we can also go in and just make some little marks on the actual inside of the shield on the where the colour is. So just draw some little lines there, like some little tears or gouges in the fabric. You don't want to overdo it at this stage, just a few here and there is fine. Too many and it kind of starts to take away from the effect, but we just want it to look like a nice battered shield. Then to finish that effect, I just want to take a little bit of the pure white that we had, and we're just going to use that to highlight the scratches by painting a small bit of white underneath the darker scratch that we've already painted on. And we can do the same for the red section of the shield by mixing a little bit of white into the original red colour that we had to make it slightly pink, and using that to make the highlight. And there we have it, a nice battered and worn shield. I hope you find this helpful for painting shields of your own, and if you do find it useful, please let me know in the comments. Thanks very much, that's all, bye for now.